The woman collapsed against the weathered fence post just as the sun began its descent behind the Arizona mountains. Her dress torn and covered in trail dust so thick it looked like she had crawled through every desert between California and the New Mexico territory. Gabriel Sawyer had been mending the gate to his horse paddock when he spotted her stumbling up the narrow path that led to his remote homestead, 3 miles outside of Mineral Park. At first, he thought she might be a mirage, the kind of vision that sometimes appeared in the shimmering heat waves that rose from the parched earth. But mirages did not fall to their knees and remain there, swaying like a cottonwood in a high wind. He dropped his tools and ran toward her, his long legs covering the distance in moments. When he reached her side, she lifted her face, and he found himself looking into the most striking green eyes he had ever seen, though they were dulled with exhaustion and rimmed with red from dust and tears. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracked and dry. "Water." Gabriel did not waste time with questions. He scooped her up in his arms, surprised at how light she felt, and carried her toward his cabin. She did not protest, her head falling against his chest as consciousness seemed to slip away from her like sand through fingers. Inside the modest but well-kept cabin, he laid her gently on his bed, the only real bed in the place. He kept his movements efficient. Fetching water from the clay pot he kept cool in the shadowed corner, then returning to lift her head carefully and press the tin cup to her cracked lips. "Slowly," he said, his voice rough from disuse. Gabriel lived alone and sometimes went days without speaking to another soul. "Too fast and you will be sick." She drank in small sips, her throat working with effort. When she had taken enough, she fell back against his pillow, and he noticed the way her dark hair had come loose from its pins, spreading across the fabric like spilled ink. She was younger than he had first thought, perhaps 23 or 24, with a fine-boned face that spoke of careful upbringing despite her current state. "Thank you," she managed, and then her eyes closed. Gabriel stood there for a moment, uncertain. He was 31 years old and had lived on this homestead for 6 years, ever since he had left behind a life in St. Louis that no longer fit him. He had grown accustomed to solitude, to the company of his 3 horses, and the occasional visit from ranchers passing through on their way to the copper mines that gave Mineral Park its lifeblood. He was not accustomed to unconscious women in his bed. He fetched a basin of water and a clean cloth, then hesitated before beginning to wipe the dust from her face and hands. It seemed an intimate thing, but she clearly needed tending, and there was no one else for 30 miles who could do it. As he worked, cleaning away the layers of grime, he found himself wondering about her story. What had brought a woman alone to this harsh corner of Arizona territory in the summer of 1879? Where had she come from, and where had she been trying to go? The sun had fully set by the time he finished making her comfortable. He had removed her torn shoes, seeing the blisters on her feet that told of walking much too far, and covered her with a light blanket despite the lingering heat. Then he retreated to the main room of his cabin, where he built up the fire in the stove and set about making a simple soup from dried beef and vegetables. If she woke in the night, she would need something gentle on her stomach. Gabriel ate his own supper standing at the window, looking out at the darkening landscape. The stars were beginning to appear, brilliant and thick in the clear desert sky. He had always loved this view, the sense of endless space and possibility. But tonight, he found his thoughts pulled back to the woman sleeping in his bed, to the mystery she represented. He made himself a bedroll on the floor near the stove and lay down, though sleep was slow in coming. Several times during the night, he rose to check on her, to make sure she was still breathing steadily, that no fever had taken hold. Each time he found her sleeping deeply, her face peaceful now that rest had claimed her. Dawn came with its usual brilliance, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Gabriel woke with the light, as he always did, and went about his morning routine quietly. He fed and watered the horses, collected eggs from his small chicken coop, and hauled fresh water from the well. When he returned to the cabin, he found her awake, sitting up in bed with the blanket clutched to her chest, her eyes wide and frightened. "Easy now," he said, setting down the water bucket. "You are safe here. I am Gabriel Sawyer. You collapsed outside my property yesterday evening." She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her taking in his appearance, the brown hair that needed cutting, the beard he kept trimmed but never shaved completely, the simple clothes of a working man. He must have passed some test in her assessment because her shoulders relaxed slightly. "I am Sophia Donovan," she said, and even exhausted, her voice carried the clear tones of education. "I apologize for imposing on your hospitality. I had hoped to make it to Mineral Park before nightfall, but I underestimated the distance." "Where did you start walking from?" Her face clouded. "The stage station at Coyote Springs. There was an incident. The driver refused to continue with me aboard." Gabriel felt his jaw tighten. He could imagine the kind of incident that might result in a woman being put off a stagecoach in the middle of nowhere. "That is near 20 miles from here." "You walked all that way." "I did not have much choice." She met his eyes directly, and he saw pride there, stiff and unyielding. "I paid for passage to Mineral Park, but apparently my money was only good until the driver decided otherwise." "What happened?" She looked away then, color rising in her cheeks. "Another passenger, a man with too much whiskey in him, became inappropriate. When I rejected his advances, he claimed I had encouraged him. The driver took his side and said I was causing trouble. They left me at the station with my trunk, which I had to abandon because I could not carry it." Anger flared in Gabriel's chest, hot and sudden. He had seen this kind of injustice before, the way women were blamed for the bad behavior of men, the way they were left vulnerable with no recourse. It was one of the many things about society that had driven him to seek solitude in the first place. "That trunk is probably gone by now," he said, keeping his voice even. "The station keeper at Coyote Springs has a reputation for selling off abandoned goods." "All my possessions," Sophia said quietly. "Everything I own in this world was in that trunk, clothes, books, my mother's jewelry." She pressed her lips together, fighting emotion. "But I am alive, and that is worth more than any possession." Gabriel moved to the stove and ladled soup into a bowl. "You need to eat. When did you last have a meal?" "Yesterday morning, before we left the last-way station." He brought her the bowl and a spoon, then retreated to give her space. She ate slowly, and he could see the way the food revived her, bringing color back to her face. While she ate, he scrambled eggs in a pan and made coffee, the routine tasks giving him time to think. When she had finished the soup, he brought her the eggs and a cup of coffee. "You mentioned you were heading to Mineral Park. Do you have people there?" Sophia shook her head. "I was to meet my cousin, Margaret, who works as a schoolteacher there. She wrote to me in San Francisco saying there was a position available, that they needed another teacher. I sold everything I could not carry and bought passage on the stage. Your cousin knows you are coming." "She should have received my telegram. I was due to arrive yesterday." Sophia's face tightened with worry. "She will be concerned when I do not appear." Gabriel considered this. "I can ride into town today, let her know you are safe." "It is Sunday, so if she teaches at the school, she will not be working." "You would do that?" Sophia looked at him with surprise. "You have already done so much. You cannot make the journey yet, not with your feet in that condition. You need at least a few days to heal." He drank his coffee, thinking, I will take you to town when you are ready, but there is no sense in your cousin worrying in the meantime. Relief washed over her face. Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. You are very kind. He shook his head. Just doing what is right. Any decent person would do the same. But even as he said it, he knew it was not quite true. There were plenty of people in this territory who would not have helped, who would have seen a woman alone as something to be taken advantage of rather than protected. He had chosen this isolated life partly to escape such people, to live according to his own code rather than the corrupt rules of so-called civilization. After breakfast, Gabriel prepared for the ride to town. Before he left, he showed Sophia where everything was in the cabin, made sure she had water and food within easy reach, and warned her to stay inside with the door barred until he returned. I have a rifle there by the door if you need it, he said. Do you know how to shoot? My father taught me, she replied. I am not an expert, but I can manage. He nodded, pleased. A woman who could handle a gun was less likely to become a victim. I should be back before sundown. Rest as much as you can. The ride to Mineral Park took just over an hour on his steady mare, Juniper. The town was busier than usual, with miners and their families out on their day of rest. Gabriel did not care much for crowds, but he made his way to the small house that served as quarters for the schoolteachers, information he had gained from the postmaster. Margaret Dawson answered his knock, a woman of perhaps 27 with light brown hair and a capable air. Her face was drawn with worry. Miss Dawson, I am Gabriel Sawyer. I have news of your cousin, Sophia Donovan. Margaret's hand flew to her throat. Is she all right? The stage arrived yesterday without her, and no one could tell me what happened. She is safe at my homestead. There was trouble on the stage, and she was put off at Coyote Springs. She walked most of the way to my place and collapsed from exhaustion. She is recovering now, but it will be a few days before she can travel. Margaret's face cycled through several emotions: relief, anger, and worry. She walked from Coyote Springs. My God, she could have died. Come in, please, Mr. Sawyer. Tell me everything. Inside the small parlor, Gabriel related what Sophia had told him, leaving out no details. Margaret's face grew progressively darker as he spoke. This is exactly the kind of treatment that made me want Sophia to leave San Francisco, she said bitterly. Our family, well, they have fallen on hard times. Sophia was working as a companion to an elderly woman, but the woman died, and the family tried to force Sophia into a marriage with a man 3 times her age, a business arrangement to settle debts. She ran rather than submit to it. Gabriel felt that anger stir again. She has courage. She does, Margaret agreed. More than anyone I know. When I wrote to her about the teaching position, I hoped to give her a fresh start, a chance to make her own way. I should have sent money for a private coach rather than having her take the stage. She is here now, and she is safe. When she is well enough, I will bring her to town. Gabriel stood, preparing to leave. Margaret rose as well, studying him with sharp eyes. You live alone out there, Mr. Sawyer. I do. And yet you are willing to shelter my cousin, no questions asked, expecting nothing in return. He met her gaze steadily. I am not like the men who abandoned her, Miss Dawson. She needed help, and I gave it, that is all. Margaret's expression softened. Forgive me, I am protective of Sophia. She has been through much, and I would not see her hurt further. I understand. You are welcome to ride back with me if you wish to see her for yourself. But Margaret shook her head. I have obligations here today, students to prepare for. But please, tell Sophia I will come visit in a few days and that her position is waiting when she is ready. Gabriel agreed and took his leave, but the conversation stayed with him on the ride back. He thought about Sophia's story, about a woman running from a forced marriage, trying to build a life on her own terms. It was not so different from his own story, really. He had left St. Louis to escape expectations, to avoid becoming the kind of man his father wanted him to be, a man who valued money and status over integrity. When he returned to the cabin, he found Sophia asleep again, curled on her side with one hand tucked under her cheek. She looked younger in sleep, vulnerable. Something stirred in his chest, a protective instinct that went beyond simple charity. He moved quietly, not wanting to wake her, and went about his afternoon chores. But he found himself returning to the cabin more often than necessary, checking on her, making sure she was comfortable. When she woke in the late afternoon, he told her about his visit with Margaret. Relief and happiness transformed her face. "She is not angry with me for the delay." "Of course not. She is worried about you, but I assured her you were in good hands." Sophia smiled, and Gabriel felt his heart do something strange in his chest, a skip and flutter he had not experienced in years. "You did not have to do that, ride all that way to ease our worries." It was no trouble. He busied himself with preparing supper, suddenly awkward. "How are you feeling? Any better?" "Much better. The rest has helped tremendously." She shifted on the bed, wincing slightly. "Though my feet are still quite sore. That will take a few days." "You did a lot of damage walking that far in shoes not meant for it." He glanced at her. "Are you well enough to sit at the table for supper? Or would you prefer to eat in bed?" "I would like to sit at the table if you do not mind. I feel lazy lying about while you do all the work." He helped her to the table, steadying her when she limped. She wore only the simple chemise and petticoat she had been wearing under her dress, which he had hung up to air out and brush clean. Even in such plain garments, she had a natural grace that made him acutely aware of her femininity. They ate together as the sun set, and Gabriel found himself talking more than he had in months. Sophia asked him questions about his life, about how he had come to this remote homestead, and something about her genuine interest drew out his story. "My father is a banker in St. Louis," he explained, passing her more bread. "He had my life planned from the day I was born. The right schools, the right friends, the right marriage to the right family. Everything was about maintaining status and increasing wealth. You did not want that life. I wanted to make my own choices. I wanted to do work that mattered, not just count other people's money." He paused, remembering. "When I told him I planned to head west to homestead and raise horses, he said I was throwing my life away. He cut me off completely, told me never to come back." "That must have been difficult." Gabriel shrugged, though the memory still carried a sting. "It was his choice, not mine. I wrote to him several times in the first year, but he never replied. Eventually, I stopped trying." "Do you regret it, leaving?" He looked around the cabin, at the simple life he had built with his own hands, then back at her. "Not for a moment. This is honest work, and I answer only to myself. That is worth more than all the money in my father's bank." Sophia nodded slowly. "I understand that feeling. My family wanted me to marry a man who could pay off their debts, to sacrifice my future for their mistakes. They said it was my duty, that I was selfish to refuse." Her voice grew quiet. "My mother cried and said I was breaking her heart. But you left anyway." "I did. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, but I could not spend my life with a man I did not love, could not even respect, just to solve problems I did not create." She met his eyes. "Does that make me selfish?" "It makes you brave," Gabriel said firmly. "Everyone has the right to choose their own path, man or woman. Anyone who says different is trying to control you for their own benefit." She smiled again, and he realized he was becoming addicted to that smile, to the way it lit up her face and made her eyes sparkle. "Thank you for saying that. I have doubted myself so many times since I left San Francisco." They talked long into the evening, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future. Gabriel learned that Sophia loved books, that she read everything she could get her hands on, that she had once dreamed of going to college, though her family had considered such an idea scandalous. She learned that he had taught himself carpentry and blacksmithing, that he was working to breed horses hardy enough for the desert climate, that he someday hoped to expand his homestead into a proper ranch. When exhaustion finally claimed her, he helped her back to the bed and then made his own bedroll on the floor again. But he lay awake for a long time, thinking about the woman sleeping a few feet away, about the unexpected connection he felt to her. The next few days fell into a comfortable rhythm. Each morning, Gabriel tended his animals and did his outdoor work while Sophia rested and regained her strength. In the afternoons, they would sit together, sometimes talking, sometimes reading from the few books he owned. Gabriel found himself hurrying through his chores, eager to return to the cabin and her company. Sophia proved to be helpful despite her injuries, insisting on doing small tasks like mending his shirts and preparing vegetables for supper. She moved around the cabin with increasing ease, and Gabriel tried not to watch her too much, tried not to notice the way the light caught in her dark hair or the musical quality of her laugh. On the third day, he caught himself staring at her as she sat by the window reading, the afternoon sun creating a halo around her head. She looked up and caught his gaze, and something passed between them, a spark of recognition that made his pulse quicken. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "How much I have enjoyed having you here," he admitted before he could stop himself. "These past years, I thought I preferred solitude, but now I realize I was just waiting for the right company." Color rose in her cheeks. "I have enjoyed being here too. More than I should, perhaps, given that I am supposed to be starting a new position in town." "You could still do that. Teach in town, I mean, but you would not have to live there." He took a breath, knowing he was stepping into dangerous territory. "You could stay here if you wanted." Sophia set down her book, her expression serious. "Gabriel, are you asking what I think you are asking?" "I do not want you to leave," he said simply. "These few days, they have shown me what my life has been missing. I know it is sudden, and I know you have plans, but I hope that maybe you might feel the same way." She stood and crossed to him, moving carefully on her healing feet. When she reached him, she took his hands in hers. "I do feel the same way. When you found me, I was at the lowest point of my life. I thought I had escaped one trap only to find myself in another. But you showed me kindness without expectation, respect without condition. You treated me as an equal, as a person worthy of care. How could I not develop feelings for you?" Gabriel lifted one hand to cup her cheek, marveling at the softness of her skin. "I need you to be sure. Life here is hard. It is isolated and sometimes lonely. I cannot offer you the comforts of town or the society of other people." "I do not want those things," Sophia said firmly. "I want honesty and freedom and a partner who sees me as I am. I want to wake up each day and know that I am choosing my own life." She leaned into his touch. "I want you." He kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that sent electricity racing through his veins. She responded with equal tenderness, her arms coming up to circle his neck. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "We should do this properly," Gabriel said, though everything in him wanted to kiss her again. "I should court you, give you time to be certain." "How long does a courtship typically last?" Sophia asked, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Months, usually. A year, sometimes." "That seems excessive, given that we have been living in close quarters for days and I already know I want to spend my life with you." She traced her fingers along his jaw. "But if propriety demands it, I can wait." Gabriel laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "We will compromise. You will go stay with Margaret in town, take the teaching position, and I will court you properly." We will see each other regularly, and when we are both certain, when enough time has passed that no one can say we rushed, then we will marry." "That sounds reasonable," Sophia agreed. "Though I warn you, I am already certain and the waiting will be difficult. For both of us," he admitted. That evening they sat close together on the porch, watching the sun set over the desert in a spectacular display of color. Gabriel had his arm around Sophia's shoulders, and she leaned into his side, fitting perfectly against him. "Tell me about your horses," she said. "Your plans for breeding them." He told her about his vision, about creating a line of horses that combined endurance with intelligence, animals that could thrive in the harsh desert climate while remaining gentle enough for family use. She listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed she understood both his practical goals and the passion behind them. "I could help," she offered. "With the breeding records, the bloodlines. I have a talent for organization and a good head for details." "You want to be a rancher's wife?" he asked, only half teasing. "I want to be your wife," she corrected. "Whatever that entails." The next morning, Gabriel hitched his wagon and prepared to drive Sophia into Mineral Park. Her feet were healed enough for her to wear the shoes he had cleaned and repaired, though she still moved gingerly. He had washed and mended her dress as well, and she looked almost respectable, though her lack of other possessions was obvious. The ride to town took longer than his usual trips on horseback, but Gabriel did not mind. Sophia sat beside him on the wagon seat, and they talked the entire way, making plans, sharing dreams, building a future in words. When they reached Margaret's house, the schoolteacher came running out, her face bright with relief. She embraced Sophia tightly, then turned to Gabriel with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for keeping her safe, Mr. Sawyer. I am forever in your debt." "No debt," Gabriel said. "But I hope you will not object to my courting your cousin." Margaret looked between them, surprise giving way to understanding and then delight. "Object, I am thrilled. Sophia deserves happiness and you seem like a good man." "He is," Sophia said firmly, "the best I have ever met." Gabriel helped unload the few supplies he had brought for Sophia, items to tide her over until she could replace her lost possessions. Before he left, he drew her aside for a private moment. "I will come to town on Sunday," he said. "We can attend church together if you like, or go for a walk, whatever you prefer." "I would like that very much." She rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. "Thank you, Gabriel, for everything." He rode back to his homestead with a strange mixture of happiness and loneliness. The cabin felt empty without her presence, too quiet and too still. But he threw himself into his work with renewed purpose, driven by the knowledge that he was building something not just for himself anymore, but for a future with Sophia. Sunday came slowly. Gabriel cleaned himself up more carefully than usual, trimming his beard precisely and wearing his best shirt. He arrived at Margaret's house mid-morning, his heart pounding like a young boy's on his first courtship. Sophia answered the door, and his breath caught. She wore a simple dress borrowed from Margaret, but she had done something with her hair, pinning it up in a way that showed the elegant line of her neck. She was beautiful, and for a moment, he could not believe his good fortune. They walked through town together, Gabriel offering his arm and Sophia taking it with a smile. People stared, curious about the newcomer and her connection to the reclusive homesteader, but Gabriel did not care. Let them look. He was proud to be seen with her. They attended the small church service, sitting together in a back pew. Afterward, they walked out to the edge of town where the desert opened up, finding a shaded spot under a cluster of mesquite trees. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing as easily as it had in his cabin. "How is the teaching?" Gabriel asked. "Wonderful," Sophia said, her face animated. The children are eager to learn, and Margaret has been so helpful in showing me the curriculum. I started just this week, and already I feel like I have found my calling. I am glad. You deserve work that fulfills you. And your horses, how are they faring? Gabriel told her about the new training techniques he was trying, about his plans to travel to California in the fall to look at breeding stock. I was thinking, he said carefully, that if we were married by then, you could come with me. We could make a trip of it, see San Francisco perhaps. I would like that, Sophia said. Though I have no desire to see my family, that bridge is burned beyond repair. What about your mother? You said she cried when you left. Sophia's expression grew sad. She cried because I would not bend to her will, not because she understood my position. If I went back, even married and happy, she would still see my life as a disappointment because it is not what she wanted for me. She shook her head. Some relationships cannot be salvaged, Gabriel. I have made peace with that. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Then we will build our own family, create our own traditions. We will make a home where people are valued for who they are, not what others expect them to be. That sounds perfect, she whispered. As summer deepened into fall, Gabriel made the trip to town every Sunday without fail. He and Sophia spent their days together walking, talking, dreaming. He brought her flowers from the desert, taught her the names of plants and birds. She shared her love of literature with him, reading aloud from books she borrowed from the small town library. They were building something solid, a foundation of friendship and respect that made their growing love all the stronger. Gabriel had never felt this way about anyone, this certainty that he had found the person meant for him. Every moment with Sophia felt both exciting and comfortable, passion and peace intertwined. Margaret watched their courtship with approval, often inviting Gabriel to stay for supper after church. She told him stories about Sophia's childhood, about her intelligence and determination, her kindness to those less fortunate. Everything Margaret said only made Gabriel love Sophia more. By October, when the desert heat finally broke and the nights grew cool, Gabriel knew he could not wait any longer. He had a ring made by the town's jeweler, a simple gold band engraved with a pattern of desert flowers. He had also been working on expanding his cabin, adding a second room and making improvements throughout. Everything was ready for the life he hoped to build. On a Sunday afternoon, under the same mesquite trees where they had spent so many hours, Gabriel got down on one knee. Sophia's eyes filled with tears before he even spoke. Sophia Donovan, you came into my life when I did not even know I was waiting for you. You have made me happier than I ever imagined possible. I love you with everything I am, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that love. Will you marry me? Yes, she said immediately, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. Yes, Gabriel, I will marry you. I love you so much. He slipped the ring onto her finger and she laughed through her tears, holding her hand up to catch the light. It is beautiful. You are beautiful. Everything about this is beautiful. They married 3 weeks later in the small church in Mineral Park. Margaret stood up for Sophia, and Gabriel asked the town's doctor, a man he respected, to stand with him. Sophia wore a new dress, white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, purchased with her teaching salary. Gabriel wore his best suit, brushed and pressed to perfection. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Gabriel kissed Sophia with all the pent-up longing of their months of courtship. The small congregation applauded, and Margaret cried happy tears. They held a modest reception at the hotel, the whole town invited to share in their joy. People brought food and gifts, welcoming Sophia fully into the community and acknowledging Gabriel's place among them. He had always kept himself apart, but Sophia had drawn him back into society, softening his rough edges without changing his essential nature. As evening fell, they rode back to the homestead together in the wagon, Sophia's few possessions loaded in the back. She sat close to Gabriel, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "Are you nervous?" he asked softly. "No," she said. "I have never been more certain of anything. I am exactly where I am meant to be." The cabin glowed with lamplight as they approached, warm and welcoming. Gabriel had spent the previous day cleaning everything, filling vases with wildflowers, making the space as beautiful as he could for his bride. When he lifted Sophia down from the wagon, he held her a moment longer than necessary, just looking at her face in the starlight. "I love you," he said. "I will work every day to make you happy, to be worthy of you." "You already are," she replied. "You have been from the moment you helped a desperate woman without asking for anything in return." He carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing at the traditional gesture. Inside, the cabin felt different, transformed from a solitary man's dwelling into a home. Sophia looked around with shining eyes, taking in all the improvements he had made. "Gabriel, you have done so much. The new room, the curtains, the furniture. When did you find time for all of this?" "I wanted everything to be perfect for you," he said. "I wanted you to feel that this is your home, not just my place that you happen to live in." She turned to him, her expression soft with emotion. "Anywhere with you would be home, but yes, this is perfect. Everything is perfect." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a discovery of each other that left them both breathless and awed. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Gabriel stroking Sophia's hair while she traced patterns on his chest. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she murmured. "When I was walking through the desert, so tired I could barely stand, I thought my life was over. I thought I had made a terrible mistake leaving San Francisco, that I would die alone in the wilderness. But you did not die. You survived, you kept going, and you found me." "I found you," she agreed, "or you found me. Either way, I am grateful for that stage driver's cruelty. Without it, I might have passed right through your life without stopping." Gabriel kissed the top of her head. "I prefer to think that we were meant to find each other. That somehow the universe conspired to bring us together." "I like that version better," Sophia said, yawning. "It is more romantic." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, the desert night silent and peaceful around them. The next months were a time of adjustment and joy. Sophia continued teaching in town 3 days a week, making the journey on the gentle mare Gabriel had given her as a wedding gift. On the other days, she worked alongside him on the homestead, helping with the horses and learning the rhythms of ranch life. She proved to be a quick study, unafraid of hard work, and her organizational skills transformed his record, keeping from scattered notes to a proper system. In the evenings, they would sit together, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's presence. Sometimes Gabriel would play the harmonica he had not touched in years, and Sophia would sing along in her clear, sweet voice. They were building a life together, piece by piece, day by day. Winter came, mild by Eastern standards but still cold enough to require fires and extra blankets. Gabriel loved these nights most of all, when they would bundle up together and watch the stars through the window, making plans for the spring. "I want to expand the vegetable garden," Sophia said one evening. "If we plant more, we could sell the surplus in town. The miners are always looking for fresh produce." "That is a good idea," Gabriel agreed. "We could also think about getting some cattle, not many, just a small herd to start. Between the horses and cattle, we could build a proper ranch." "I would like that," Sophia said. "I want to build something that lasts, something we can pass down to our children someday." "Children," Gabriel repeated, testing the word. The idea filled him with a mixture of excitement and terror. "How many children do you want?" "As many as we are blessed with," Sophia said. "I always imagined a large family, a house full of noise and laughter, but I will be happy with whatever comes." "I want that too," Gabriel said. "I want to give our children the freedom to choose their own paths, to support them no matter what they decide to do with their lives." "We will," Sophia promised. "We will be the kind of parents we wished we had." Spring arrived with an explosion of wildflowers, carpeting the desert in unexpected color. Sophia was delighted, spending hours gathering blooms and pressing them into books, identifying species and sketching them. Her joy was infectious, and Gabriel found himself seeing the landscape through new eyes, appreciating beauty he had taken for granted. In April, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. She told Gabriel over breakfast, her face glowing with happiness and nervousness. He swept her into his arms, laughing and spinning her around until she begged him to stop before she grew dizzy. "We are going to be parents," he said, wonder in his voice. "Sophia, we are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" she asked, searching his face. "I know we have not been married long." "I am thrilled," he assured her. "This is everything I wanted, everything I hoped for when I asked you to marry me." They told Margaret the next Sunday, and she wept with joy, embracing them both. "I am going to be an aunt," she said. "Oh, this is wonderful news. The baby will be so loved." As Sophia's pregnancy progressed, Gabriel became increasingly protective. He did not want her riding into town anymore, worried about the jostling affecting the baby. They compromised, with Sophia teaching only 2 days a week, and Gabriel driving her in the wagon instead of letting her ride alone. He threw himself into preparing for the baby's arrival, building a cradle from pine wood and sanding it until it was smooth as silk. Sophia sewed tiny clothes, her face soft with maternal anticipation as she worked. They talked endlessly about names, about how they would raise their child, about the kind of family they wanted to create. In November, as the weather cooled again, Sophia went into labor. Margaret came to stay with them, and together she and Gabriel helped bring Sophia through the long hours of childbirth. When the baby finally arrived, a lusty, squalling boy with his father's brown hair and his mother's green eyes, Gabriel felt his heart expand to hold a love he had never imagined possible. "He is perfect," Sophia said, exhausted but radiant as she held their son. "Gabriel, look at him. He is absolutely perfect. What shall we name him?" Gabriel asked, stroking one finger down the baby's impossibly soft cheek. "I was thinking Thomas," Sophia said. "After my grandfather, the only one in my family who supported my decision to leave. He passed away years ago, but I would like to honor his memory." "Thomas Sawyer," Gabriel tested. "I like it. It is a strong name for a strong boy." Thomas proved to be a healthy, happy baby, and both Gabriel and Sophia fell completely in love with him. Gabriel had worried that he might not know how to be a good father, but he found that instinct and love carried him through. He changed diapers and walked the floor at night, sang lullabies in his rough voice, and marveled at every tiny milestone. Sophia balanced motherhood and teaching, though she cut back her hours to spend more time with Thomas. She had a gift for managing multiple responsibilities, somehow keeping the household running smoothly while caring for an infant and continuing her work with the horses. Margaret visited often, doting on her nephew and helping Sophia with the endless tasks that came with a baby. She had found happiness herself, courting the town's new lawyer, and Gabriel and Sophia were pleased to see her building her own future. The ranch continued to grow. Gabriel's horse breeding program was beginning to show results, with several promising foals born that spring. Word of his quality stock spread, and he began selling horses to ranchers throughout the territory. The additional income allowed them to expand, to hire a hand to help with the heavy work, to make improvements to the property. When Thomas was 2 years old, Sophia became pregnant again. This time, she carried a girl born in the spring of 1883. They named her Charlotte, and she had her mother's dark hair and her father's steady temperament. Where Thomas was active and adventurous, Charlotte was thoughtful and observant, but both children were bright and loving. Life fell into a rhythm, busy and full and deeply satisfying. Gabriel had never imagined he could be this content, that simple domesticity could bring such profound joy. Every morning, he woke next to the woman he loved, and every evening he came home to children who greeted him with shrieks of delight. It was everything he had never known he wanted. The years passed in a blur of milestones. Thomas learned to ride before he could properly walk, fearless on the back of the gentlest mare. Charlotte learned her letters early, sitting on Sophia's lap and sounding out words from books. They had a third child, another boy they named James, and then a fourth, a daughter they called Eleanor. The cabin had long since been expanded into a proper ranch house, with multiple bedrooms and a large kitchen where the family gathered for meals. Gabriel had built a separate bunkhouse for the ranch hands they now employed, and a sturdy barn that housed their growing herd of horses and small group of cattle. Mineral Park thrived as the copper mines expanded, and the ranch thrived along with it. But success never changed Gabriel's essential nature. He remained a man of integrity, treating his employees fairly and teaching his children the value of honest work. Sophia continued teaching part-time, unable to fully give up the work she loved, and served on the school board, advocating for better resources and opportunities. Margaret married her lawyer and had children of her own, and the two families were close, getting together often for meals and celebrations. The children grew up more like siblings than cousins, playing together and learning from each other. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Gabriel and Sophia sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sunset as they had done countless times before. The children were asleep inside, worn out from a day of riding and playing. Sophia leaned against Gabriel's shoulder, his arm around her waist. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Marrying me, taking on the responsibility of a family?" Gabriel looked at her in surprise. "Never, not for a single moment. Why would you even ask such a thing?" "Sometimes I think about the man you were when I met you," Sophia said. "So independent, so content with your solitude. I worry that maybe I trapped you into a life you did not really want." "You freed me," Gabriel said firmly. "I thought I was happy alone, but I was only hiding from life, protecting myself from being hurt. You taught me that love is worth the risk, that connection is what gives life meaning." He turned her face to his, making sure she heard the truth in his words. "You and our children are the best thing that ever happened to me. This life we have built is beyond my wildest dreams." Tears shimmered in Sophia's eyes. "I love you, Gabriel Sawyer. I loved you from almost the first moment, and I love you more with every passing year. And I love you, Sophia. You came into my life exhausted and desperate, and somehow you saved me even as I gave you shelter. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to build something lasting." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky, surrounded by the life they had created together. The children grew. Thomas became a skilled horseman, working alongside his father to continue developing the ranch's breeding program. Charlotte discovered a love of learning that rivaled her mother's, and Sophia taught her at home when the town school's curriculum proved too limited. James was the dreamer of the family, always creating elaborate games and stories, while Eleanor was the social one, making friends wherever she went. Gabriel taught all his children to ride and shoot, to value hard work and fair dealing. But he also taught them to think for themselves, to question injustice, to stand up for what was right even when it was difficult. He and Sophia created a home where ideas were discussed openly, where curiosity was encouraged, where each person's dreams were supported. The ranch continued to prosper. Gabriel's horses became known throughout Arizona Territory and beyond, prized for their intelligence and endurance. Wealthy buyers came from as far as California and Texas to purchase breeding stock. But success never made Gabriel forget his roots, and he was known for his generosity, helping neighbors in need and supporting community causes. Sophia eventually gave up teaching to focus on the ranch and her growing family, though she continued to tutor students privately and served on various civic committees. She started a lending library out of their home, sharing her extensive collection of books with anyone who wanted to read. Education remained her passion, and she made sure that all her children had opportunities she had been denied. Margaret remained a constant presence in their lives. Her children and Sophia's children grew up together, a tight-knit group bonded by family and friendship. When Margaret's husband passed away unexpectedly in 1890, killed in a riding accident, it was Gabriel and Sophia who supported her through the grief, who made sure she and her children were cared for until she could find her footing again. Time moved forward, bringing changes both large and small. Arizona achieved statehood. The mining industry in Mineral Park began to decline, and some families moved away, but the town adapted, becoming more focused on ranching and agriculture. Through it all, the Sawyer Ranch remained a constant, a landmark of stability and success. On their 20th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Thomas was 20 now, engaged to be married to a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread. Charlotte was 18, planning to attend a teaching college in California in the fall. James was 16, already writing stories that impressed everyone who read them. Eleanor, at 14, was the image of her mother, beautiful and intelligent and kind. Gabriel looked around the table at his family, at the children who had grown into remarkable young adults, at the wife who had made it all possible, and felt profound gratitude. This was what life was supposed to be, this warmth and laughter and love. After supper, when the children had scattered to their various pursuits, Gabriel and Sophia walked out to their favorite spot, a rise that overlooked the ranch buildings and the desert beyond. The sun was setting in shades of gold and crimson, painting the landscape in glorious color. 20 years, Sophia said wonderingly. It seems impossible that so much time has passed, and yet I can still remember every detail of the day you found me, half dead from exhaustion, collapsing at your fence. Best day of my life, Gabriel said, the moment that changed everything. I was so frightened, Sophia remembered. I thought I had made a terrible mistake running away trying to make my own path. And then you appeared, this quiet, kind man who asked nothing of me, who just offered help because it was the right thing to do. I fell in love with you almost immediately, Gabriel admitted. I tried to tell myself it was just loneliness, that any woman would have affected me the same way, but I knew even then that you were special, that you were meant to be mine. We were meant to be each other's, Sophia corrected. Two people running from lives that did not fit, finding each other in the wilderness and building something better than either of us could have imagined alone. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the light fade. Below them, lamps began to glow in the ranch house windows, and they could hear the faint sound of Eleanor playing the piano they had bought her for her last birthday. I have been thinking, Gabriel said slowly, about the future, about what happens when I am gone. Gabriel, do not talk like that. You are only 51. We have many years ahead of us. I hope so. But a man should make sure his affairs are in order. He took her hand. Thomas will take over the ranch, obviously. He has the skill and the passion for it. But I want to make sure all the children are provided for, that Charlotte can pursue her education, that James has time to develop his writing, that Alina has choices when she is older. They will be fine, Sophia assured him. You have built something solid here, something that will provide for all of them and their children after them. But more importantly, you have taught them to be capable, to work hard, to think for themselves. Those gifts are worth more than any inheritance. You helped with that, Gabriel said. More than helped. You shaped them just as much as I did, maybe more. You made them kind and curious and brave. We did it together, Sophia said. Everything we have done, we did together. The years continued their inevitable march. Thomas married and took over more of the ranch's daily operations, allowing Gabriel to slow down and enjoy his grandchildren, the first of whom arrived 9 months after the wedding. Charlotte became a teacher, as passionate about education as her mother, though she chose to work in Phoenix rather than returning to Mineral Park. James published his first book of stories, a collection of tales set in the Arizona Territory that earned critical acclaim. Alina fell in love with a young doctor and married at 19, moving to Tucson but visiting often. Gabriel and Sophia settled into the comfortable rhythm of older age. They still worked, but at a gentler pace, spending more time with each other and their expanding family. Gabriel taught his grandchildren to ride, just as he had taught his children. Sophia read to them, instilling her love of books in a new generation. Margaret grew old alongside them, a beloved aunt and friend. The three of them would sit together on the porch in the evenings, reminiscing about the early days, marveling at how their lives had unfolded. I am so glad you wrote to me, Sophia said to Margaret one evening. That letter changed my life, gave me the courage to leave San Francisco and start fresh. And I am glad you came, Margaret replied. Though I confess, I never imagined it would lead to all this. She gestured at the thriving ranch, at the grandchildren playing in the yard. I just thought you would teach school and maybe eventually meet someone. I did not envision you marrying a reclusive homesteader and building an empire. It is not an empire, Gabriel protested, but he was smiling. It is just a ranch. A very successful ranch, Margaret corrected. One of the most respected in the territory, no, the state. Success measured in money is hollow, Gabriel said. The real success is in this. He gestured to his grandchildren, to his children working together to continue the family business, to Sophia beside him. This is what matters. Family, love, a life lived according to our own values. As the sun set on another day, the three old friends sat in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, but united in gratitude for the paths their lives had taken. Gabriel and Sophia celebrated their 30th anniversary quietly, just the two of them taking a trip to San Francisco, something they had talked about for years, but never done. It was strange for Sophia to return to the city she had fled 3 decades earlier, to see how much had changed and how much remained the same. They did not contact her family. Sophia had received word, years earlier, of her parents' deaths, but she had not attended the funerals. That part of her life was closed, and she had no desire to reopen old wounds. Instead, they explored the city as tourists, visiting museums and theaters, enjoying fine dining and the energy of urban life. But after 2 weeks, both were eager to return home. The city that had once seemed so sophisticated now felt noisy and crowded. They missed the open spaces, the peace of the ranch, the rhythm of their desert life. I cannot believe I once dreaded living in a remote homestead, Sophia said on the train ride home. Now I cannot wait to get back to it. Home changes when you build it with someone you love, Gabriel said. It is not about the place as much as the person you share it with. They returned to Arizona to a warm welcome from their family. The grandchildren had missed them, and Thomas reported proudly on how well he had managed the ranch in his father's absence. Everything was exactly as they had left it, familiar and comforting. The next years brought the inevitable sorrows that come with age. Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep at 72, and both Gabriel and Sophia mourned the loss of their dear friend. But they also celebrated new joys, more grandchildren, watching their children thrive, seeing the ranch continue to prosper under Thomas's management. Gabriel's health began to fail in his early 70s. Nothing dramatic, just the slow wearing down of a body that had worked hard for decades. He moved more slowly, tired more easily, but his mind remained sharp, and his love for Sophia never wavered. On a spring morning when Gabriel was 73, he woke before dawn as he always had. Sophia stirred beside him, and he gathered her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I love you," he said softly. "I have loved you every single day since you stumbled into my life." "And I love you," Sophia replied, sensing something in his tone. "Gabriel, what is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," he assured her. "Everything is right. I just wanted you to know, wanted to say it clearly. You made my life worth living. Every good thing I have, every moment of happiness, it all comes back to you." They rose and went about their morning routine, but Gabriel moved even more slowly than usual. By mid-morning, he admitted he was not feeling well and agreed to lie down. Sophia sent for the doctor, worry tight in her chest. The doctor confirmed what Gabriel already knew. His heart was giving out, worn down by decades of hard work and the simple passage of time. There was nothing to be done except make him comfortable and wait for the inevitable. The family gathered, children and grandchildren filling the ranch house with their presence. Gabriel held court from his bed, dispensing wisdom and love to each of them, making sure they knew how proud he was, how much he loved them. But mostly, he wanted Sophia. She sat beside his bed, holding his hand, and they talked in quiet voices about their life together, reliving memories, expressing gratitude for every moment they had shared. "Do not mourn too long," Gabriel told her as the sun set on what both knew would be his last day. "I have had a full life, a happy life. I have no regrets." "I will mourn as long as I need to," Sophia said, tears streaming down her face. "You are the love of my life, Gabriel Sawyer. There will never be anyone else. I know, and you are mine, but I want you to keep living, to keep finding joy. Our grandchildren need you. Our children need you. Promise me you will not withdraw from life." "I promise," Sophia whispered, "but it will be so hard without you." "You are the strongest person I know," Gabriel said. "You walked 20 miles through the desert rather than give up your freedom. You left everything you knew to build a new life. You can survive this too." As night fell, surrounded by his family, Gabriel Sawyer closed his eyes for the last time. Sophia held his hand as he drew his final breath, and though her heart shattered, she also felt profound gratitude. They had had 31 years together, years filled with love and laughter and purpose. Not everyone was blessed with such happiness. The funeral was attended by half the state, it seemed. Gabriel had been respected throughout Arizona, known for his integrity and his generosity. Ranchers and miners, teachers and businessmen, they all came to pay their respects to a man who had lived according to his principles and left the world better than he found it. Sophia bore her grief with dignity, supported by her children and grandchildren. But the nights were hard, sleeping alone in the bed she had shared with Gabriel for 3 decades, waking to an emptiness that no amount of activity could fill. She kept her promise, though. She did not withdraw from life. She continued to work with the horses, to spend time with her grandchildren, to help Thomas manage the ranch. She served on civic committees and taught children to read and tried to find purpose in each day. But she missed Gabriel with an ache that never fully healed. She would catch herself turning to tell him something, only to remember he was not there. She would wake from dreams where he was still alive, the disappointment of reality crushing. Sophia lived another 14 years, active and engaged until the very end. She saw her great-grandchildren born, watched the ranch continue to thrive under Thomas's leadership, saw Charlotte become a principal, James publish a successful series of novels, Elena raise a house full of children who all pursued medical careers. On her deathbed, surrounded by 3 generations of the family she and Gabriel had created, Sophia felt at peace. She had lived a full life, had loved deeply and been loved in return. She had helped build something lasting, something that would continue long after she was gone. "Tell me about grandfather," one of her great-granddaughters asked. "Tell me how you met." And so, with her last strength, Sophia told the story one more time, how she had been running from a life that did not fit, how she had collapsed in the desert, exhausted and hopeless. How Gabriel had found her, had taken her in without expectation, had given her rest and safety and, eventually, his heart. "He was the best man I ever knew," she finished, her voice barely a whisper. "And I was blessed to spend my life with him." "You blessed him too," Thomas said, holding his mother's hand. "He told me once that finding you was the moment his real life began." Sophia smiled, her eyes drifting closed. "Then we blessed each other. What a gift that was." She passed peacefully that night and was buried beside Gabriel on the rise overlooking the ranch they had built together. Their children and grandchildren stood together at the funeral, united in grief, but also in gratitude for the legacy of love and purpose their parents had left them. The ranch continued for generations, always called the Sawyer place, a landmark of stability in a changing world. And though the details of Gabriel and Sophia's story blurred with time, the essence remained. 2 people who had found each other when both were lost, who had chosen each other when they could have remained alone, who had built a life of meaning and joy from the raw materials of courage and love. In the end, theirs was not a story of grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though it had started with both. It was a story of daily choices, of commitment renewed each morning, of 2 people who worked together to create something bigger than either of them alone. It was a story of partnership and respect, of passion that matured into deep, abiding love, of lives intertwined so completely that even death could not truly separate them. And on that desert rise where they rested together, wildflowers bloomed every spring, painting the earth in brilliant color, a reminder that even in the harshest landscape, beauty and love could flourish with the right care and tending.